Welcome back, our dear lurkers, to another episode of the Third Age Babylon 5 podcast. And yes, I'm finally back. I managed to rehabilitate a bit after being burned out from my last university activities. So, yeah, I'm back, bitches. And today's episode, All Alone in the Night, will be rather interesting. But before we go to the abduction parts here, we have another question, or well, it's more like a returning question of introduction, because we thought it was a bit of a time ago that we asked, what was the last books you bought? And yeah, we thought it would be a nice moment to return to that question. So, Alex or Layla, what was your last books?
I mean, I can start because I have the smallest and shortest one. I just today got a package with the full script for Hadestown. So it's a musical. I don't know if this qualifies properly as a book, but after enjoying the show quite a lot, I've now finally gotten like the concept album and the actual album as a CD back there and as a vinyl, and now also in script form, because I enjoyed quite a lot. It's an interesting take on the Orpheus and Eurydice myth, which is very romantic, very beautiful, very interesting.
We just last night bought tickets for the show in London, and we will do that later that year. Yeah.
Which is going to be a very different experience because we enjoyed so far the Broadway version of it, but the West End version is obviously completely different cast, different direction. It's going to be great.
My turn?
Yes.
Yeah, so the last book I bought were actually 3 books, but before I bought these 3 books, I had it in 1 book, and now to reread it, I bought it in 3 versions, which are so beautiful.
Yeah, they are pretty.
The Dune trilogy, and yeah, I had it in 1 big book, and that stressed me out. So to reread it, I bought these ones, and oh my god, they are so pretty. They are so pretty. I never want to be done reading these because they are so pretty. And I love the books very much, but oh, this time they are just so nice.
Yeah, I totally feel the struggle of reading 1 big one. I once had 1 big version of Lord of the Rings, and yeah, you can kill people with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's like we have an increase of books presented because I'll answer your 3 books with 4, which is the result of rather cheap opportunity of buying 4 books for the price of 3. And well, I bought these most of the reasons were through recommendations, like this one and this one and this one and this one. And I just realized that no one who just listens to the podcast and not watching it wouldn't know what I was talking about. So I just say the names, the titles of the books. It's Circe from Madeline Miller. It's Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow from Gabrielle Zevin. I'm not sure if I'm saying that name right. From M.L. Rio, If We Were Villains. And The Lost Bookshop from E.V. Woods. I don't know how good these books are since I never read anything from these authors, but yeah, they were thrown in my face and I couldn't resist. So yeah, well, from the books to the episode, our set, it's All Alone in the Night. Well, it's technically very in the title. It's on one hand Sheridan, that through his abduction is also all alone, more or less, on an alien ship that I think up until now is not known to the human world. And on the other hand, we have Delenn that's being separated from the Minbari in one way or another, and also makes her kind of alone. But Sheridan and also Delenn realize at some point that they're not that alone. And I think that's perfectly fine for a summary for this episode. So, yeah, well, I just go over to my first impression. I really like this episode because it puts us into the next step in the story. It gives us some points to questions we have had earlier. And also we have Kosh, and he is his mysterious trolling being, like always. But I think that it felt a bit different, more on the serious side of, okay, there's something really important he is actually telling here. So yeah, and I should add that I'm starting to also being a linear fan by now, and since he has a really good time in this episode, and of course we're having or had a lot of these times, I have to say, where the fuck is Natoth? And don't come with some serious reasoning why the person was not able to be there. I don't care. I want her to be there. That's not acceptable. Yeah, and with that, I give room for you too.
I mean, that's a very valid complaint to have. Where is she? She should have more things to say. But first impressions wise, now that you say it, I think it's a lucky coincidence that you took your little break when you did, because this feels like a very good episode to get back into the season and back into the plot, because we have so much forward motion here. I have to say, I am always surprised how many relevant things are in this episode, because I look at the title and I only think about the alien abduction and none of the things that the alien abduction actually facilitates. And without all those, it's really just Sheridan in a room having to fight, and that is not the most memorable thing in the world. But yeah, having rewatched it, there are many, many juicy little tidbits in there that I'm excited to talk about.
Yeah, same here. When we were rewatching it, I was wondering if I had actually watched it again, but then there were moments I recognized, just moments that I did not expect in that episode. For example, all of these Minbari scenes with Delenn, which I definitely want to talk about in more detail. They are very important, and I think it's not the first time that we saw a Minbari cruiser from the inside like that, but I think we had very nice shots in these violet, sparkling corridors, and a lot of insight in Minbari society that we get here. So that's very nice. And yeah, I think we could also maybe build up a little interpretation on the title, because if you remember correctly, All Alone in the Dark, or in the night, is what I believe in the first episode in the introduction Sinclair used to say to describe the situation that all the aliens have on Babylon 5. And so especially around the Sheridan, but also around the Delenn plot, we can find connecting points here of what are they all alone with in the night, and what is this opportunity that they have there. Yeah, I'm saying a lot more useful things than I thought when we started watching it, because I was like, oh, it's this alien fighting episode, yay. But yeah.
There is surprisingly a lot more to it. And I like the idea of looking at this title, because also when we start looking at the ending scene and the little conspiracy that they are becoming a part of, also very much a small group of people alone in the night against like a much, much bigger world out there, and anticipating to see some darkness, some shadows coming. But okay, you already said you're excited about the Minbari plot. If we want, we can just start with that one.
Yeah, let's start with that one.
Wonderful.
Well, maybe for clarification, right in the beginning of the episode, Delenn is saying that a new leader of the Minbari was chosen. And considering that we just know about the Grey Council so far, or at least I know, the question for me would be, what is this new leader that was chosen? In what context is the title of leader considered here?
If you think back to season 1, Delenn was actually offered the position as leader, specifically because I think the 10-year anniversary passed of the death of the past leader, Dukat, who is name dropped there. And she was, offered the position of presiding over the council. So it's not something that exists separate or on top of the council, but it is sort of somebody who presides over it and takes a guiding mentor role. And she rejected that, much to the chagrin of the council. So this is kind of a continuation of that, because, of course, if she doesn't take the leadership role, somebody else will.
Yeah, what is a bit disturbing for me is that it is mentioned here that there is a new leader, which feels like, yeah, it was just done recently. And considering when she was asked, I mean, you say it's season 1, that does not just feel so long ago because it is season 1, but also because there is some reasonable amount of time that passed there. So yeah, does it take so much time to choose a new leader, or is it that again there's a new leader? I mean, maybe that's just pointing out to unimportant things, but just felt strange to me hearing this at this point here with a bit of lack of background information.
I don't think that's pointing to something unimportant at all. I think, if we look at real life, it is not unheard of that, an election takes place and then it takes a very long time for a coalition and a government to form and people to decide who is actually in charge. And usually that's a bit of a problem because you kind of need the government to run things. And sometimes you're surprised how long things run without the government actually being properly formed. So if we see this in the Minbari, I think it's perfectly reasonable to look at that and say, that's odd and probably not a good thing that things just take forever.
Yes, and also we see that the structure of the government is a bit changing at the moment and taking new ways. That is what we learned throughout the episode, and that might have its reasons.
Yes, and I mean, this is very much in line with what we've seen from the Grey Council before. The Grey Council is on a ship in the middle of nowhere. That doesn't seem ideal to run a government. The Grey Council took 10 years to deal with a single ship that mutinied at the Battle of the Line, and they put off dealing with that for as long as possible. So the Minbari in total don't seem like the most agile kind of government to do anything, and that's certainly not a great thing.
Yeah, it's a bit like the elven approach.
Yes.
Passed it for a long time because time doesn't necessarily have any meaning to us, so it doesn't matter if you do it next week or next year.
Yeah, and we're still upset about the fact that the world seems to be going badly, but it's not like we can do anything about it. What do you want from us? Actually decide on something? No, that's crazy.
Yeah, it feels a bit like that. Yeah, maybe jump a bit ahead and go to the reconstruction, or generally the construction of the Grey Council, before we go to Delenn's personal path here, because is it just me again, or is it the first time that we clearly have the setup told to us of the Grey Council? Because here it is that Delenn is, since there is a new person in the Grey Council, that she's saying, 3 from the working class, 3 from the religious class, and 3 of the warrior class. And that is the construction of the Grey Council. And at least for me, it feels like it's the first time we have it this clearly pointed out to us.
This is definitely not just you. A part of the reason is the fact that the Minbari have 3 distinct castes wasn't entirely decided during season 1. Like, this is definitely something that we are only hearing very clearly now, because in season 1 there are even scenes where they are just talking about they are warriors and they are religious caste. They don't mention the workers at all up to this point. So yeah, here we really get finally to learn how the Grey Council is really comprised, and the system immediately breaks down also. But originally there is this idea, the Minbari are zen, the Minbari are in balance, everything is fine. We have 1/3 of our society devoted to religion, only 1/3 to military, and 1/3 to doing everything else. That is balanced and good, and clearly nothing can go wrong with that.
Yeah, and here we have this system broken. And yeah, with that we're already in the story of Delenn, that she is being asked to come to a meeting, and her position being discussed, or at least that's how she phrases it to Lanier, but we soon find out that it's not about a discussion, but that the decision was already made and that she is no longer part of the Grey Council. And yeah, that is the point where she is even more unsettled that the one who is replacing her is our dear old friend Naroon from the Warrior Cast, that shouldn't be in this position since she is from the religious cast here.
And there are a lot of interesting little pieces. I mean, we can decide what to talk about first, but maybe because you mention it, aren't you happy that we get recurring characters finally? And aren't you happy that the first one we get is Naroon out of all people?
Honestly, I don't remember him that much or that annoying strongly as our friend Bester. What I like is that it's a recurring character because it's just not that typical to reuse characters. Usually you have this one red shirt feeling that we also have in this episode, but with a different character. But I'm happy to see that it's again not done here, and someone used that is present, was already present, just to give this world a more structured way or more stabilized way. I think that's the better word of phrasing it.
Yes, I think that's a very good way of putting it. And on top of giving us this sense that the world is larger and cohesive beyond what we see, I think it's also giving us a sense that there are consequences to people's actions. Like Delenn decided, I'm going to go on Babylon 5. I'm not going to be involved with the day-to-day politics of the Grey Council. That's cool, but just because she's a main character for the show, this doesn't mean the world revolves around her. So if she just stays away from all this, somebody like Naroon, who probably was a lot more ambitious, is gonna rise to the occasion. And yeah, from his perspective, the last year was probably a great hero's journey towards success because he's finally done it. He's no longer a subordinate to her.
Definitely, and I mean, he is in all the way he can expressing this.
Yes.
He's the only one when there's a second meeting held where Delenn is allowed finally to face the whole council to state what her wishes are in consideration of her position on Babylon 5. He is the only one speaking and technically telling her to fuck off.
Yeah.
Because Babylon 5, is like an outcast, exiled position where they just want her to be, not with the Minbari, not with her people, because, the racistic part, she is no longer part of the Minbari and not part of the human alien to us. That's even phrased that way, so...
I mean, so they basically summoned her to discuss her position and her change that she has undergone and if she can't even serve the Grey Council anymore. That is basically the reason why she's summoned there.
I think we can talk about the reasons on all sides a little bit, but that's definitely like the intention why she's there.
Yes, and then...
Overall, for me, it feels like they're calling her to tell her to piss off.
I think this is where it gets interesting. Like, ostensibly, this is about she needs to know about her new position, but, you know, we've seen her last interactions with the Grey Council, and this feels very much like comeuppance. The Grey Council was annoyed by what she's been doing. Naroon especially was annoyed by what she's been doing, so they are just taking this opportunity to really rub it in. And
then the outcome is that she is no longer part of the Grey Council, so she lost her old position. See, she's not Satai anymore. But they keep her on Babylon 5, and I think that's still an interesting decision.
And I think it's one of these elements where this is why I say I like to discuss the reasons a little bit, because just on paper, you have Delenn, who for all intents and purposes has spent the past few years only caring about Babylon 5, and even now in this discussion says, whatever you do, keep me on Babylon 5. On that basis alone, saying, okay, but then you shouldn't be part of the Grey Council anymore, is perfectly reasonable. There's no reason for them to be this racist about it, which is why I think it's very much personal comeuppance. But it is still interesting because I don't have any difficulty seeing how Neroon, for example, convinced the rest of the Grey Council that this is a good thing to do, not just because of his personal reasons, because there are legitimate arguments here that she's probably not somebody you want on the Grey Council right now.
Yes.
And of course, her availability for the Grey Council. I mean, since being part of the Grey Council means to be together with these people and having discussions, and since she is not there, she technically is neglecting her position.
I mean, moreover, when was the last time we saw her use her position for anything? It was to make a body disappear for personal reasons, what she thought his preferences would have been. That seems borderline very corrupt, if anything.
Yes, but you are not really simplifying things, because if you could really take it to the broader level, she has been on Babylon 5 to undergo this change, which she thinks is the one preparation that needs to be done for the Great War that is coming very soon. That is the main point that she makes. So it's not just that she was just sitting there and studying humans because she has this personal interest in humans, and then while not doing anything other than looking at humans, she also made a body disappear. That is just one small thing. She really is completely lost in this prophecy. What I find interesting about that is that she's convinced that this Great War is going to come. She calls it a Great War. What do you need in a Great War? Technically, you need a lot of warriors. You need a lot of military force. I mean, it's the first assumption. You have to look at the war in detail, but it's not bad if you have that. So she is aware that this big war is going to come to the galaxy, and still she wonders why the warrior caste now gets more to say. While playing into that prophecy of the war is coming, we have to prepare, that actually is also, although it hurts, because we have met Neroon as a villain, it's a reasonable action, actually, by the Grey Council, isn't it?
And it's also kind of rubbing even more irony in her face, because back when she first initiated the change, the Grey Council was very mad at her because the Grey Council essentially said, yeah, you believe this is necessary because the war is coming, but we are supposed to be a council and make this decision, unanimously. And all of the Grey Council, or the majority, told her, don't do it, please. And then she went and did it anyway, which is a good reason for her to be expelled again. But of course, now they're turning around and say, oh, you know what? You were actually right. The war is coming. It's just that now we use this as a reason to kick you off and tip the entire balance towards warfare. So once again, this also feels like a very big, middle finger to her specifically.
But also, I feel like she's not really shocked that she's not part of the Grey Council anymore. She's only shocked that the balance is being changed. She's very happy that she can go back to Babylon 5. I think that was her main goal.
I think if they had offered the free place to Dral, for example, she would have been over the moon and been like, yeah, that's great, do it.
Yeah.
I think the interesting part here is especially this balance, because that's in part when she's saying, yeah, the Great War is coming. She's also talking about balance and uniting the Minbari. What I found irritating at this point was that she was there talking about the two sides of the Minbari. And I'm not sure how she phrased it, but considering that we have here that previously she said, yeah, we have this Trinity here, in the double meaning, it feels a bit odd. I mean, I do understand that there's probably those, especially in retrospective to the war with the humans, that there was one side for peace, the other for war, and the different opinion or perspectives that come with this, and this is the reason why we have these two sides in the Minbari culture or Minbari population, but still it feels strange in a contrast to what you said before.
It is, and it also showcases that when she's talking about balance and, uniting the Minbari, everything she says is still very much colored by this view of tradition and prophecy, balance to her means 9 members of the council, 3 of the workers, 3 of the military, 3 of the religious caste, which, if you look at any kind of modern government and say, okay, 1/3 of our ministers are going to be generals now, nobody is going to think that's a reasonably balanced policy making that's going to come out of that. So she has some really cool ideals at heart, but she's also dealing with them through a very specific lens.
Yes, and I think we have just learned that we have this working caste that has limited political relevance.
Yeah.
When you're born into a working class, you basically don't matter for any big decisions the Great Council ever makes.
At least so far we know.
I mean, so far it is very much this idea. There are these 2 sides. You are either for the war against the humans or you're against the war against the humans. And there's always the Minbari of the warrior caste and the religious caste that are side by side. And then the workers are kind of just the pawns that they try to pull to their side to get their way. But it's not like the workers get their own side in the matter. And then talking about reasons again, apart from being mean to Delenn, the reason they give as well, it's only reasonable that we have 4 members of the warrior caste, not only because we need a lot of warriors in the next war, we warriors also sacrificed the most in the last war, which is once again this very narrow thing. Okay, you only sacrifice for a war if you are literally on the battlefield, if, you've been producing tanks or lost all family members to the conflict or something. Sure, you were part of it, but you didn't really sacrifice anything in the same way, which is also a way of thinking that definitely exists in the modern world.
Just get one idea, because the 2 sides she's talking about, maybe it's not about the Minbari, or the population itself, or the people themselves, but since we have this whole Minbari soul going to the humans, or the human world, that it's the connecting the biological Minbari to the Minbari souls in the human world. That it's about connecting these 2 sides in preparation of this great war. That would make far more sense than what we've said so far. That
makes a lot of sense, and especially when we maybe at the end of our discussion at some point compare the situation that Delenn is in after her meeting with the Great Council, and that we, after this episode, understand that Sheridan is in relation to his Earth government. Maybe if we compare their situation, we can come up with interesting connections there.
Most definitely.
I think before we switch topics, I would really like to maybe summarize for how we view Delenn's actions in here, and also the reactions that we get. So Delenn is being summoned to the Great Council because of the change that she underwent, and we can later discuss maybe a few comparisons of her situation and the situation that we now know Sheridan is in, and that he also invites our main cast into, as well as maybe also talk about this going by the rules or also going against the rules of your own government. We can maybe talk about Delenn definitely did something the Great Council did not want her to do, but did she actually break rules? Are there precedences for this? Are there even rules yet, or is this so new that there aren't? And compare that to the view Sheridan clearly has on things. And we learned that she is removed from the Great Council and is now focusing her whole work fully on the work on Babylon 5, which actually seems to be something that she agrees with, something that is good for her. But we learned that the power structure in the Minbari society is shifting, and we don't know yet how that will work out or what that will lead to, definitely. But the signs stand for war in these conversations, definitely.
And I think what makes her story so interesting is that she is somebody with incredibly strong ideals and an incredibly strong idea of what needs to be done, which is partially informed by prophecy. And I make no secret of being rather critical of that element of her character. But at the same time, we also see the Great Council and the entire Minbari system is not prepared for somebody like that. There aren't really any systems that deal with this idea. What happens if somebody is on the Great Council and just goes rogue? And the way they choose to resolve this is bad, but it's bad also in part because the system doesn't seem to account for somebody like interpreting the prophecy wrong. And whenever prophecy is such a big part of government, there's good reasons to be very critical of that either, and more so than Delenn taking that to heart. I think ultimately the things going so wrong, even though some of the decisions she makes are questionable, it is at no point her fault. It's just that the system isn't really set up to deal with her in any way, and that's bad.
I think what Delenn and the Minbari system have in common is that their ground structure is rather strong, which can be a good thing because it is not shaken up lightly, but also it's rather problematic to adapt to new situations and to make a change. And therefore, we have Delenn's personality also reflected in the Minbari culture itself, or in the Minbari government here.
And this adds a completely different or additional layer to the comparison that you are suggesting between Sheridan, his position, and Delenn and her position, because I think the strength of character and what makes these characters special is also something that the second plot around Sheridan very much explores.
So maybe we should switch over to that plot.
Maybe an honorable mention of Lanier, because my God, he is such a good boy.
Isn't he cute?
Yes, certainly. He's on the for me on the same level as Veer. Because honestly, I think there are at least two moments where he feels rather smug, even in the way he is answering to Delenn. On one hand, he is showing a really, really strong and admirable case of
Loyalty.
I wouldn't. I'm kind of feeling there's needs to be a different word for that, because loyalty usually feels so so militaristic.
Commitment, maybe.
Yeah, I think commitment is a better description for that, because it's not on this systematic level, but on a personal level. And I think that's also an important thing, because it shows how Lanier has changed.
Yes.
Because in the beginning he felt more like, more robotic, because this strong system, and that's where I have to or am I allowed to act, and that changed, at least for me, drastically. Absolutely. Even to the point where he is, I think he feels more freer, more personal, like he has a space to exist.
And I like to imagine that this is something that, in between the episodes and all the scenes that we don't get to see, this is something that Delenn has been fostering in him. Because, like you say, he goes from the aide that comes to the station, doesn't want to look her in the face even, to somebody who very smugly says, "Oh, you're not going alone. I just won't let you. What you're gonna do about it? I already ordered the extra flyer and such." So, yeah, I think he's definitely showing so much more agency, and is a very positive example of how you can have such a rigid system, but he gets the system enough, and he gets Delenn to a point where he can, make his own wiggle room in there.
Yeah, I'm just now in my head recalling some linear moments from later that I'm so looking forward to.
We are going to just found a Linear fan club at this moment and include that in the tapestry.
I think we should summarize it more like the 8 fan club, because I mean he's in the same compartment as Veer, and I would love to add Natos there. So but since she is missing for so long, that's a bit problematic.
I think it's also now at this point where the Nan are at war, so I don't know how many fun-sized stories we could have on her front, but it's still a travesty that we don't get more of that as of now, because, my God, she definitely, like in the scenes we had more than enough potential for this.
Yes, definitely.
But okay, talking about people, creating a bit of wiggle room for themselves and going out on their own. Not Sinclair, Sheridan, but it is a very Sinclair move. Sheridan has a very great idea. And I was looking forward to your reaction to this because
when Sheridan started talking about this, I was like, where the hell is Sinclair coming from?
There's just one commander of this station that we cut some slack for actions like this because he always gets away with it, and Sheridan is not that commander. When he tries it, it immediately goes horribly wrong.
Yes, I mean, even when you were saying what could go wrong, you said...
Yes, I think the last lines.
But I do like the justification that pilots do get hazard pay, so he's just eager to get some flight hours in because it's a better pay. Yeah, we know that he's stingy about the money he makes from this job. He's been very passionate about how much rent he pays, so I'd buy that as a motivator for him. He doesn't have some heroic death wish or trauma from Battle of the Line that he needs to get through. He's just greedy about it and gets immediate repercussions from that.
Well, I do understand the wish to see something else. I mean, technically you don't see anything outside of the Babylon station, but it's just the idea of being technically somewhere else can help to lift your mood, your spirits, and give you some sort of relaxation, even if you don't have this in this moment, of course. But the overall idea just to get out is something I can totally understand, even though it's still fucking stupid here. I can't even talk anymore because this is so...
On some level, I think it works though, because Sheridan used to be a spaceship captain, and one of the first things we said when we were watching this part of the episode is this could be a TNG episode. This would fit right in as an adventure of the Enterprise. So yeah, if he's craving his good old days on the Agamemnon and trying to recapture some space adventuring, he's certainly doing that. It's just not something he should be doing as commander of Babylon 5.
It's funny considering that through his wish as to relieve some old days, he indirectly is recalling the Agamemnon to be punished. Yes. Which is also something I really like to see here. I mean, of course, they needed a bit more firepower here, but choosing in this circumstances the Agamemnon is quite nice to see, because it just gives this nice feeling of a good connection.
Once again, creating a recurring character in that ship and just a little bit more of cohesion for the world at large. Like, we know the Agamemnon had the mission of being on the frontier, so if he gets lost out there, sure, why not that ship?
Yeah, maybe this is before talking about this battle, is the red shirt should be named here. I think Ramirez was his name. Yeah. The fighter, and I was like, the first moment he appeared, I was like, okay, is he going to be a red shirt? And I had the hopes, since this wasn't a thing, or at least not much of a thing in B5 till now, I had hopes. And then they were shattered.
Yeah,
well, I mean, of course, it shows why they didn't use, what was the guy's name? Something with K.
Keffer.
Keffer, okay. Keffer was his name. Why they didn't use him? Because, yeah. But up until now, even though he is mentioned big in the opening, he had like feeling zero appearance.
We were talking about this last week when we were talking about Gropos. This was like the one episode where he's actually a character, and I even thought like it worked kind of okay there, but it was also this, what else are you gonna do with him? Like, if you don't get a bunch of side characters that are kind of off his rank, he has no reason to interact with anybody else. It's just a very unfortunate position to be in. So yeah, he survived this episode, but also the less reason for him to be in the credits. So unfortunately, it's kind of a catch-22 for him. Apart from
I mean, the reason we have here when with Ramirez connecting with Franklin and Garibaldi, I think it's working in some way because they are not his superiors. They work in different areas, and therefore I think the hierarchy isn't that strong to feel there, so it's easier or more possible. So
it's definitely possible. It's still a weird pairing to try and have to force as part of the main cast almost.
Yes, that is true. Still, I love their discussion and just the realization of, when I'm so used to Mars gravity, I'm so fucked up on Earth. I love this.
Yes.
Yeah, we're talking about.
I love that. Yeah, that was an interesting point.
Yeah, it's not just sports. I mean, of course, yeah, it's sports. Like when you are a team on Mars and you have your training camp on Earth, you come back as a superhero, basically. But when you are born on Mars, I mean, oh my God, and you have to get used to Earth gravity. What the fuck?
Let's just hope they have like very good medical therapy. I mean, this is something that famously the Expanse did a lot with this like diversification of humanity into almost getting like into microevolution territories where their bodies adapt to that. Babylon 5 never goes so far, but there's this acknowledgement that, it's weird. I mean, even being on Babylon 5 is probably a bit of an experience when you get back on Earth, because as far as I know, Babylon 5 approximates gravity, but, as you move up and down the cylinder and just spend more time in the cockpit and stuff, you're not as used to constant 1G as you are on the planet, so even these people are going to have a hard time returning.
Yeah. Anyway, I love that little detail. That was wonderful.
It's a great little element.
Especially with this information, this whole scene gets so much more to it than this sorry for me, really, really boring discussion about sports. Because it's just, I have no connection to this at all. I mean, I appreciate the effort sports people are putting in there, being it professional or just for fun. But I can't get behind this. Oh my gosh, we have to go and see them and root for them. This whole fan-based thing is a problem for me, but I never really get into. But especially sports is, I really have no connection to this at all, and therefore every time this comes up in a movie, in a series, in a book, my brain just switches off and was waiting to that it's over, so I can come back.
But I mean, in this, it creates kind of an interesting vehicle, because you have this wacky sci-fi world where people live on Mars, and then it's like, okay, in what context are people talking about this? And you don't want a writing where, this is all about, the big world-building implications for industry is that, by the way, and in this many generations, people will look completely different. No, people will talk about this in, the context of everyday things that they're interested in. For these two dudes, it's just sport as a vehicle for that. And I think mixing the very mundane with the high sci-fi concepts is a cool way of bringing this together.
Definitely.
Yeah, totally.
And especially in an episode like this, we spent like a good part of our discussion and also the episode talking about weird space elves in robes in a completely dark room discussing the fate of the souls of humanity. It's good to then get grounded a bit again and see like, but there's also just normal people living their lives here. Like the humans we're talking about aren't the mythical heirs of Elendil that are destined to rule Gondor. No, these are like everyday dudes, which is also one of the reasons where I can really understand somebody like Neroon looking at Warren Kefan being like, really? This is where our souls go? I'm not thrilled about that. That is not the great prophecy that I was promised.
Yeah.
But though I have to say, and kind of understand Neroon there.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, do you want to talk in detail about the aliens and the abduction, or do you want to go straight forward to the big Sheridan plot and reveal?
I think I would like to talk, moving from the discussion of baseball a little bit into, we will get to the aliens, but how do you feel first about this idea that, okay, we are in space, but there's still alien abductions going on? And I mean, the aliens of this episode are called the Stripe, but we see one near the end. These are just greys. Like, these are the Roswell aliens with big black eyes that are like taking people and taking cows and, you know, preparing secretly for a big invasion and all that. And I don't know, I find it kind of neat, kind of cute that even in the sci-fi universe, if you're out in the middle of nowhere, there might be a UFO that picks you up and takes you and does evil things with you.
Yeah, I would totally go in with that. But also with the addition, it's not just the humans that are getting abducted, but also other aliens.
Yes.
So that's
Yes.
something everyone has to fear. And I really like this little twist because it's just taking something from the mundane. I don't know if I want to really to call it a myth, but kind of the direction, and put it out in space and put it on everything existing there.
I mean,
Good.
just we already had like a little while back the scene where the judge is like talking about the criminal case and they're showing Cropcircle. Like, isn't that the most amazing thing that you can go in this universe to Babylon 5 to a bar, and the one thing that you can bond with the local aliens over is that aren't Cropcircles weird? Aren't these aliens assholes that just stole some of our farm animals for the shits and giggles back in the day? Like, that this is such a universal experience that people are worried about. Or, you know, on a more serious level, like every alien is gonna understand that going into a dark forest at night is scary. And, you know, farmland can be scary if there's UFOs around. That these are these kind of universal experiences that everybody shares. For show about all forging connection and creating peace, that's very good.
That definitely is very good, although still in this episode, with all of the reveals that it had so far about Sheridan, about Delenn, about the Minbari, and about the Earth government and whatever, I was a bit skeptical if we actually needed this swooped-in adventure in that episode.
Yeah, I mean, they do feel very much like aliens of the week a little bit, right? They're not the most original design for the show even. We've seen aliens kind of like that before. And I mean, their entire threat is also very much dealt with in this episode. Like, Delenn talks about, oh yeah, they've done this before, and we just bombarded them a little bit, and then they stopped for a while. And now for some weird reason, this hasn't created peace, and they're trying it again, so I guess we just bombard them some more. Like, this is a very simplistic solution to the entire thing.
Yes, on one hand, but I think there's a bit more there. One thing I find it rather interesting that this was a thing for the Minbari, but it's not like, obviously this is news to those on B5. So I don't know. I think it's something I would tell others. Like, I mean, we solved it, but please look out. This could still happen to you. I don't know. It's like, I don't know, if I meet someone and I know, yeah, this area is like dangerous, I would say, hey, maybe not go there, or if you go, be careful. I don't know, take this with you. I don't know, but I think that's interesting.
What you're saying is completely reasonable. I think what the Minbari have just learned is, with humans, this is kind of pointless. Or, I mean, to pedal back a little bit, we've already talked about how the Minbari are very rigid in what they're doing. And I think for the Minbari, it's very much the case. They would tell humanity, you know what? Space? Pretty dangerous. Basically, any direction you go, you either find alien superweapons or aggressive minor species that we bombarded before, or soul hunters trying to steal the essence of your life space. So honestly, what you should do is just stay in your little bubble. And we already know humanity just doesn't do that. And so, I mean, I think there's just a certain element where there are so many things dangerous in space that probably somebody told humanity about the stripe at some point. But, you know, it's humanity. It's going to go there anyway.
Or maybe the direction.
It's humanity. It's gonna go there anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, either this or it's a direction that's still on pending within the Minbari.
Very possible.
Because it just
Although,
takes some time.
then to be fair, I spent today a little bit at the local Bürgerbüro, whatever, citizens office, whatever the proper translation is of that, looking at human bureaucracy. So it's also very possible that 50 years ago, the Minbari filed a very important report about the stripe, and the ministry just hasn't gotten to that yet. So on both ends, I could easily imagine that this communication got lost.
Maybe. But well, maybe going to the more reasonable part, what I think this abduction gives to Sheridan as a character is this all alone in the night part.
Yes.
Because first he loses everyone on his squad in some way. Later he gets to know, yes, he really lost everyone. He is alone in the beginning until he manages to some sort of way saves the Narn that was abducted before him. And yeah, this is like, it feels like a resemblance of what is happening to Delenn. Yes. She is going somewhere knowing she feels alone. She's also phrasing it, especially in the beginning. And here we have Sheridan who is experiencing this. And I think you really need to take him out of B5 to really show this. Of course, there are ways to showcase this loneliness or being alone on B5, but I think it's more clear to transport the message in the way they did. And of course, the realization, okay, I'm not that alone. Because if you think about it, yeah, technically he starts off alone, but Ramirez is, despite all the things that happened to him, going back and trying to, even if it's his death, taking his last breath to help Sheridan. Sheridan is helping the Narn guy. Delenn is getting help from Lanier, and Sheridan is getting help from B5, the Agamemnon, and. So it's like this, yeah, this feeling of being alone is always present again and again, but you are never really alone. There's also always someone looking out for you. And it feels like this is the overall message presented in this episode for the humankind, for the Minbari, but overall for all on those who are on B5.
And I think it's also something that maybe even word by word Lanier says to Delenn right before she enters the council meeting, I think, or maybe shortly afterwards, I don't remember, but I think he tells her that she's not alone and that he's with her.
I mean, this is his main reason for coming with, right, this idea, like, you are not alone, and also you shouldn't, like, say, I have to do this alone or something. No, you don't, and it's not going to be helpful.
But maybe now that we are at that point, do you have more to add to the abduction and to these aliens, or can we make a connection to the other thing?
I think making a connection to the other thing will already be part of this. On top of what Meike just mentioned, this idea you are never alone, for me there's also a very strong message that there are no predetermined outcomes. Like, for every bad situation in this episode, Delenn comes to the Grey Council and learns the decision has already been made. It's a foregone conclusion that she loses this. So, was it all of this pointless? Or Sheridan is sent into these gladiatorial fights, but there aren't really fights. It's supposed to be a foregone conclusion, and we see, like, some of the people that he meets, including the Narn in the beginning, have accepted that and believe that there is no way out of this. There is no way of fighting back. This is a foregone conclusion that we are lost here. And this absolute determination to say it doesn't matter what the prophecy says is supposed to happen or what the abductors have decided is going to happen. I'm still going to try and get out of here. It doesn't matter if I don't have a plan what to do when I'm out of the cell of the spaceship. I'm still going to try and escape, relying on the fact that there might be somebody out here who helps. I have no guarantees for that. There is no, greater power that guarantees this for me. But I'm going to rely on this anyway. And I think in part this is also what opens up Sheridan to having his little dream experience in the middle of all this like realization of, I will hold on to this hope anyway, which then allows him to see the fact that he truly is not alone at any point. That was just my hopeful message of the day.
Which leads us to, if you don't have anything to add here, as to Kosh and his mysterious appearance in this dream-like state of Sheridan, and of course again later when Sheridan is back on B5, voicing, "You've always been here."
Yes, so maybe for that we have to look at what that could mean. What is this here that he is referring to? And because I think there are several interpretations of what Kosh meant with this state that Sheridan is in, that he is always supposed to be in. So maybe let's talk about the meeting then, in the end.
The meeting? Not about the dream?
Oh, do you want to go deeper into the... Yeah, okay.
Just a little bit, because, I mean, yes, it is Kosh's first big experience, but this is not the only image that we get in there, right? We have a lot of Ivanova in this dream, in a psycho uniform, no less, asking, "Do you know who I am?" We have somebody talking about, "You are the hand," which stuck out to me because the last time we heard a cryptic prophecy, it was a techno-mage talking about a great hand reaching out into the sky, talking to Londo. So this hand motif has been there before. Garibaldi makes a short appearance talking about the man in between is looking for you, which is also, like, is that Kosh who is looking for Sheridan as well? Are all of these just Kosh talking through different avatars to Sheridan? I'm just interested in speculations about that before we go to the meeting.
And you have, I think it is his dead wife that is appearing there.
Mm-hmm.
At least someone in a black veil. I would presume that it's supposed to be his dead wife, because I can't remember her face.
If you're making this connection, we can assume Sheridan makes it also, so that's perfectly valid.
And of course, the weird birds. I don't know. These birds really caught me off guard because there's no connection we had so far. I think it's Ivanova that's carrying some sort of raven, or at least a black bird that's going in the direction of a raven, sitting on her shoulder, and Garibaldi is having a pigeon on his shoulder. That is weird as fuck. So yeah, I don't get anything of this. I mean, okay, birds, messengers, symbols, sort of, but the mixture here is a bit off for me. And yeah, I don't know. I don't necessarily understand what it's supposed to say here.
I wouldn't say every question that you can possibly have about these images will ever get answered, but I think with some confidence you can say, and maybe Layla, you can back me up on this, none of the imagery here is entirely arbitrary, I would say.
What do you mean by arbitrary?
Well, in the sense that you can watch the rest of the show and think, I have no idea what the fuck that was about. I think as you like see Babylon 5 in its entirety, there are at least certain things where you can go back to the stream and think, maybe this was the connection that they were talking about. Maybe this is so it is not empty in that sense.
No, it's definitely not empty, but I would not have a spontaneous idea of where to put the birds.
I mean, that's easy. He hasn't seen birds in a very long time. They're on Babylon 5, so it's just the most exotic animal he can think of. Oh, but you have the raven as kind of like a symbol for wisdom, and you have the pigeon as a symbol for peace, and these are trying to do things, and there's like black and white and talking about a man in between, which might be grey in the middle there. So there's certainly elements here that hint at being meaningful. So this is not a complete, student art house experience where somebody just throws symbols at a wall for no reason.
Why do you think that art house students would ever do that?
Because sometimes they do.
Yeah.
I'm not saying all of them.
It's like modern art. If you don't have the background knowledge, it's just nonsense to you.
But there you go. But I mean, it's a dream. It's cryptic. Cautious there. This is exciting. We can't talk about You've Been Always Here, but we can also go over to the meeting, or rather, maybe for a second we can talk about Sheridan's absolutely charming, oh my god, finally I can talk about this. I've been so annoyed sitting here all on my own, when he's first, like, gets his little reveal.
Yes, maybe we can talk about that reveal in general. Because I remember that, at least I said that when we had the episode when Sheridan was introduced as a character, that I said that I had this I was skeptical towards him. I was very mistrusting him, and I was not sure what kind of commander we got from Earth, that after the assassination of their own president was a worrisome state and still is. And I think it's interesting what we get to know about him here, and it's that Earth government or Earth Force sees him as just that, so they have the same suspicion and just use it for interests of their own. And we see that Sheridan was meant to be this Earth loyal person, and already has his own standpoint in this developed. So that he's also once again alone in the night. Definitely a kind of disconnection that he has to the home world at that point, because he was put into place because people had hopes into him, and he has an own point of view developed, of course, through all of this.
I mean, we're talking about the reveal, so maybe, Meike, you get a chance for first impression on that.
Yeah, well, I have to admit, shame on me, I completely forgot this little tidbit of that. There's more reason for him to be there. Just at this moment, when they started talking, I was, oh, yeah, right. Hey. On one hand, yeah, it's nice to finally get some pieces there. Why? For all the reasons. On the other hand, it's it kind of feels necessary at this point, because we have so much going on, especially in the government and in the power structures of Earth. And yeah, well, someone has to oppose this, and how would you do this? So it's kind of the logical choice in this kind of story to put Sheridan in this position, not as a figurehead, but as being part of this, and especially in the position of Babylon 5 as outside of not jurisdiction, but out of reach. So, out of reach, yeah, it's far off. It's not easily accessible in one way or another. So therefore, yeah, it's like kind of like the perfect fit, and also like the perfect cover, considering what this general, I forgot his name, Haig, is telling about Sheridan and about the vision or the perspective the others have on him, and that it's technically it's the perfect cover for him and for the things they are supposed to do.
And I think it's also interesting that here we see a character who grew up in the system, who perfectly fit, who had this military career, who now still looks like someone who would be loyal to Earth, that you can grow up within the system and still develop a perspective and a point of view that is skeptical and that sees its flaws, and that is also able to take a step back and realize when something goes wrong. So you don't have to be the rebel who was always against everything, who always, who never worked in any kind of way in society or in the system. You can also just see how it works, be part of it, and still turn your back on things when you think they're wrong. I think that's very interesting that we get that confirmation here that Sheridan is definitely on that road. Sheridan is definitely someone who had just this completely normal start and now makes his own decisions.
I think the question we can ask here a little bit is, how much is this talking about Sheridan being a special case? That it's remarkable that you can have this normal start, like you say, and grow up with this skepticism about it. But in some part, I imagine this is also talking about a big blind spot that forces like Clark's have usually, where it's very easy to conflate loyalty to a person with loyalty to a state. That's very often what happens, and this is something that somebody who would assassinate his president to get into power himself would certainly be blind to.
Yes, that would be blind to it.
Or the point where you are loyal to an idea or ideals.
Yeah.
That's still something different than being loyal to a system. And I think that is also playing a big part in here, because overall it feels like even though Sheridan is being named as a patriot, it's ideals, it's an idea, it's a human kind perspective he's having here, and still being open-minded and especially educated, not in this sense of school knowledge, but being able to adapt new informations, to learn from experience, to see the difference.
And I think a large part of this can also be attributed to the fact that, yes, Sheridan was brought up in a very Earth-centric and privileged position, but he has still, a family of diplomats rather than a family of military background. And I think that does make a big difference in the kind of perspective that he will have gotten on also Earth itself. He talks about, in his speech, talks about Lincoln, talks about the Dalai Lama. So he clearly has like a very cosmopolitan idea of what Earth is, rather than being Earth is Earth Force and like our culture, that is one monolithic thing. Like, I don't think Sheridan could ever come to this conclusion, having spent so much time in all different parts of Earth even.
Yes, that's true, but I also think that because Sheridan was brought up in this privileged position and then had this military career, I think I would interpret the story also as the reminder that even in this position you can still be open to new experience, to new knowledge, and take a step back from things and get your own perspective. So I think that what this story is trying to tell me is that even someone with a military background like Sinclair had it, you can get to that point. It is kind of like your own decision and your own responsibility.
Yeah, but I mean, this is what I was kind of aiming at with the first question. Like, what is the normal state here? Is it normal? Like, is it special to be this open despite a military background, or is it more a case of no, you need to be this open in a military position, especially to be a good leader? It's people like Clark who misunderstand that and essentially bring this like dullness into the position. And I think there's just a spectrum there.
So, yeah, I mean, we have Sheridan and we have Delenn, and both are now in very unique positions because they are kind of loosening or reinterpreting the connection that they have to their home world and find themselves in a situation where they feel more and more alone in the night. But then also, of course, that is always, with this episode, immediately put into question, because Delenn is not alone, because Lanier is very close to her and would really go far for her, and Sheridan makes the decision to take our main cast, his most important staff, into a secret meeting and tell them about what he's been up to and about what they are looking at. But definitely this, I think, is an episode about great transformation and being maybe out alone in the night to find a new standpoint and a new point of view in the end.
And I think this, what you describe here, also highlights a bit the key difference between the two, where Delenn needs Lanier to tell her, you don't have to be alone. It's very much his initiative, whereas Sheridan, I think, we see during the abduction and then also after his little reveal, is a little bit more proactive when it comes to seeking out others. And like, no matter the situation, he Even in an arena where he's supposed to fight to the death, he's going to find an ally. And this changes the dynamic a little bit, because in the relationship between Sinclair and Delenn, I felt always like Delenn was very sagely the wise voice that gave, bigger perspective. And now we are seeing that cracking a little bit. And this is, something where she could probably learn from Sheridan quite a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, but also I think they come more closer to the same level of understanding.
Yeah.
It's more like, they're even in their standing, in their position, in their power.
I think so. And, it is interesting to think about, like, did Delenn ever have a dream and a Kosh appearance like Sheridan had here? Like, is this the reassurance that you need to get to the kind of trust and the prophecy that Delenn has? And I mean, we know before she did her whole transformation of her own, she did talk to Kosh in a closed meeting. So there's definitely something to that as these two are getting closer to each other in terms of their understanding of the world, both are also getting closer to Kosh.
So what do you think is Kosh referring to with "you have always been here"? Like, what is this here? What do you think? But now I have problems putting it together. Does someone else want to say something to that?
I mean, I think I mean, maybe you can tell me afterwards if this hits the point that you were also working towards. Talking about you will always hear the here in a, like, very abstract sense. I think it's almost this idea, Sheridan is in this ship in a battle that he never chose and has to, like, help help somebody who was made his enemy to work together to overcome this much, much greater danger that they are in, and he has no choice about the matter. And I think this situation is what I would interpret as the here of the entire thing. And then I think it makes sense when he goes back to Babylon 5. Sheridan never wanted to be on Babylon 5. Sheridan is learning on Babylon 5 that he is once again part of a battle that he didn't want to be in, and the only way to overcome that is probably going to create peace in an impossible situation. That's all that Babylon 5 is about, to somehow overcome a greater darkness, which is probably the coming of shadows, which this entire season is talking about. And then, putting this in context of the meeting, it's once again the same thing. He never chose to be part of a military that he now feels has to, like, start moving against the Clark president who came into power via assassination. But the only way to do it is to, like, bring people together. So I feel like this is how I would interpret Kosh's entire meaning of "you've always been here. You've always been in this impossible situation. There's no getting around that."
I like this. You've always been in this impossible situation. That definitely makes a lot of sense.
And I mean, what is definitely true, and I think this is why it also makes sense talking about this quote in the context of the meeting, no matter when it happens, is Kosh is making these sweeping statements about everything when he's not trolling around. And so I think this continues to hold true.
It's interesting, though, the moment that is this is happening.
Mm-hmm.
I think Kosh is also saying that he's finally quiet enough to hear him.
Yes.
Or something. So I kind of wonder why. Why is he quiet enough? Because, I mean, in what kind of state is he in this moment? He is tired. He has not much energy left. I would imagine that the tiredness is not just a physical thing, but also a psychological thing. Though I can't imagine that this kind of state is the first time that this is happening to him. So why at this moment is he able to have this connection to Kosh, or whatever we want to call this?
I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is this idea. Ever since Sheridan was put on Babylon 5, he's been struggling to get his bearings. He wasn't familiar with micromanaging, or he was trying to micromanage everything. He wasn't familiar with delegating properly. now he has been reduced to a pure situation of survival. There is nothing else to worry about. It's only about the next few seconds. This is the first thing that comes to my mind, but that also feels a little bit flat. So I'm not sure if I'm happy with that explanation.
I would maybe add to that when we think of the impossible situation that we have now talked about Kosh might be referring to, and also his losing all of these other connections to Earth, all of these other bounds that he has before been in. With this loosening, or at least with this weakening all of these connections, he can see things on another level, and therefore can maybe see other things than he did before. Like this change of perspective he could be referring to.
Which would also add in with the title again, All Alone in the Night, that he had to be in the state of at least the feeling of disconnection, plus this tiredness, overall tiredness.
On top of that, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Kosh knows what the general will reveal to us, the audience, ahead of time. I wouldn't be surprised if Kosh anticipates that this meeting is going to happen very soon, so he's now talking to Sheridan as in, you are now ready because you've decided to take matters in your own hands. You are no longer just acting as a part of the Earth Alliance. You've now understood that Babylon 5 has the potential to be something of its own with a greater importance to a greater matter also than Earth Alliance. So all of this coming together creates this situation. And, it's Kosh. I wouldn't be surprised if he's looking into the future like half an hour at all times. So that I can reconcile that.
Okay. Do you have anything more to that episode?
There are a handful of details. I do in general like Sheridan's entire fighting sequence, like the way that he's just like desperately trying to essentially turn every adversary that he comes across into an ally is very cool to see. I think the way that he's like slowly piecing together how this is supposed to work, and eventually, like by the time he gets rescued, he has worked about as much about these aliens as Delenn tells us about them. I find that like really cool, just as an indicator of, Sheridan is actually pretty good in survival situations, it turns out.
I mean, I still have my Sheridan moment where I'm really convinced that yes, he's my commander now he has me, and that is still a bit far ahead, but it's definitely here where that gets interesting for sure. Yeah.
I mean, there's also this element we get told in the beginning, this is Star Killer. He managed to get one of the greatest victories during the Earth-Minbari War, and then the next part of the season it's him struggling to keep a clean desk because managing a bunch of diplomats is too hard for him. So I think it's just a good way of showing him, no, he is competent in certain areas. It's just not, administrative and politics duties.
I think it's also that we see here his capabilities. Like, there is a reason why he managed to get in the position of being called Star Killer. It's not just luck. It's because he is able to connect the dots to learn on the run. And I think this is also what's supposed to be shown here, just to give him a bigger or a better standing for what's coming next.
Very much so. And I think this is one of the reasons why this episode is a good one to get back into the season with, really, because things have changed, and now we've kind of, after one episode spent on showing us just how much the world has changed, we now get a reminder, okay, but we have a character who has really big hero potential to navigate these changes. And I mean, even two characters. I think Delenn is getting a pretty badass moment, essentially hearing, oh, you're missing your commander? Okay, let me just handily get in there, give you all the information and solve this problem for you, which is just nice to see that, after an entire episode spent with her losing authority and being in a very bad position, this is a reminder that none of that is because she's less capable now than she was before. On contrary, she's now reaffirmed her dedication to Babylon 5 and immediately puts that into action, which is great to see.
And I think this is the perfect point of leaving this episode. Yeah, with leaving the episode, we come to our community question, or maybe it's more like, again, coming back, because we already said this once. We would like to know if you are interested about hearing us talk more about books, especially in that case, it was the books we would take with us to Babylon 5, but maybe also in general. The question is, do you want to hear us bragging about all the books we really like? We just bought the good and the bad and the ugly. So this time, we promised this time we will put out the question how you think about that, but also you can just comment and give us your more detailed opinion on that point. And until then, where can people find us?
People can find us on YouTube, of course, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, where we have our own discussion group. We are still on Mastodon, although I still didn't get to do more there. We are Third Age Podcast everywhere. And also you can listen to us everywhere where there are podcasts, but of course here on YouTube we're the cutest because here you can see us.
So we hope you enjoyed the episode, and until next time.